Welcome back, Survivalist. So I view camping as a skill set that you can improve over time with experience. And part of that skill set is how effective and efficient you are with the gear that you actually bring, but also knowing what gear that you need and what gear you don't need. And personally, in my own evolution of developing my camping skills, there's a lot of gear that I used to bring camping that I just don't need anymore. And that's what we're gonna talk about today. I'm gonna go over 5 items that I don't need to bring camping anymore and why. So the first item I don't bring camping anymore is going to be a hatchet. And I used to bring a hatchet with me almost every time I go camping because I'm a believer that you wanna have the right tool for every job. And when it comes to processing wood, a hatchet is the perfect tool for that. And frankly, there are some aspects to processing wood that you can do with a hatchet that you really can't do with a knife. But nowadays, I typically only bring a full tang knife. Now, if you were to draw a Venn diagram of all the jobs that you can do with a hatchet and all the jobs that you can do with a full tang knife, there is a lot of overlap between the jobs that these two tools can do. And there's only a handful of jobs that you really need a hatchet for that you can't do with any other tool like a knife. And I began to realize this, and I began to realize that I would go camping sometimes and never actually use my hatchet. For wood processing, I would often just use a full tang knife and use the technique of batoning in order to split wood. And the few jobs that a hatchet is better for, I can oftentimes just improvise. For example, I often use the back of the hatchet for hammering in stakes into the ground, or maybe hammering a stick into the ground as well. But I can find something else. I can find a rock. I can use another stick as a baton to hammer that first stick into the ground. I just started realizing that there's really not that many jobs that I absolutely need a hatchet for that I can't do with a full tang knife. And by eliminating this out of my backpack, I am saving a lot of weight. This thing has a lot of weight to it, and it's just not necessary most of the time. And sometimes I don't even bring a full tang knife anymore. If I'm just doing a one-night camping trip, a lot of times a simple pocket knife will suffice for everything that I need. One of the biggest reasons that you want a full tang knife is so that you can process firewood. You can use the batoning method to split logs and split pieces of wood. But you don't necessarily have to, right? I can easily start a fire without a knife and just find scrap wood laying around and just break it off into the appropriate pieces. And if that's what I'm doing, then just a simple lightweight pocket knife will do all the jobs that I actually need. There's really not that many jobs that this knife can do that this knife can't do. But this knife is significantly lighter than a full tang heavy duty knife like this. This one here is by Spyderco, and this is actually my everyday carry knife. What I like about Spyderco is that most of their knives have a plastic handle. And that may turn you off at first, but it makes them incredibly lightweight. I've never had any problems with any of my Spyderco handles breaking or anything. So this is just significantly lighter. And if you're being honest with yourself, if you're doing a one-night camping trip, this is probably all that you need for most things. With a simple pocket knife, I can still create stakes out of small twigs. I can still cut cordage. You can still do first aid with this. You could probably even still use this as a fire starter with your ferro rod. So nowadays, this is really my default knife. And I only really bring this knife if I'm going out to bear country, let's say, or I'm planning on doing some minor bushcraft stuff while I'm out there. If I plan on doing some more serious bushcraft stuff, then I will bring the hatchet as well. Or if I'm going to be out there for multiple days or really trying to establish a campsite, then I'll bring a hatchet. And so this has really been part of my evolution with camping, is knowing what tool I actually need if I'm going camping. And frankly, for most people when they're going camping, a small pocket knife is all that you really need if you're just going out there for one night. So the next item I don't bring camping anymore is directional flashlights. So something like this is kind of like the standard flashlight that you may see in the Boy Scouts or you may buy at Walmart. It's got some big batteries in there, or maybe even a more compact flashlight like this. I don't bring either of these camping anymore. Instead, there's really 2 different types of lights that I bring with me when I go camping. The first one is a headlamp. A headlamp was absolutely a game changer for me when I started bringing these camping. I can't tell you how freeing it is to be able to use both of your hands at the same time, but still have enough light. With a traditional directional flashlight, right? If you want both hands, you have to kind of rig something up like this, or you have to try to do the jobs with only one hand, and it's very, very frustrating. You also have to kind of think about where you're putting this. But with a headlamp, like wherever you look, that's where the light is, and you have both hands free. I really don't see any purpose to bring a directional flashlight like this with me anymore when I have a perfectly good headlamp. These things are especially nice if you have to go walking somewhere in the dark. So let's say you don't quite get to your campsite yet and you have to hike an hour or so in the dark. Being able to use both hands to kind of move branches out of your way is really nice. Let's say you have to get up and use the bathroom in the middle of the night. Again, not walking into branches, having both hands accessible, it's just an absolute game changer once you realize all the benefits of having a headlamp versus a directional light. Now, the other light that I do bring is one of these luminades. I love this product a lot. And this creates an omnidirectional light. It's more of a lantern that lights up an entire area. And these things are super, super lightweight. They don't take up much size at all, much space, and they have a solar panel built into the top of them, and it's just a small LED light in there. But I bring this hammock camping with me every single time, and I love this thing. And I set this up on the ridge line inside my hammock, and this is more than enough light for me to read a book or do whatever I need to do within my hammock. I'm a big, big fan of these. And so this is the only two lights that I bring. I bring one headlamp, and then I bring one of these lights as well. And if I absolutely had to, this would be a good backup light just in case I lose this, especially with the solar panels that are built into it. So if you haven't done so already, ditch these old school heavy duty flashlights and get yourself a nice headlamp instead. So the next item I don't bring camping anymore is a full cooking set. So I bought this whole cooking kit years ago at REI, and I never put much thought into it. Every time I go camping, I would just grab this kit and just knew that it had everything in there that I needed. But the problem is that it has a lot of stuff in there that I never would actually use when I'm camping. And over time I realized I just don't need most of the stuff that's actually in this set, and it just takes up a lot of space and adds a lot of weight to my backpack. Even a smaller plastic kit like this, it's just a lot of overkill in my opinion, right? This has cups and bowls and utensils and strainers and everything already in here. Again, I just don't use half the stuff when I actually am out there camping and cooking meals. So nowadays, all I bring is this, right? It's just a small metal cup that I can boil water in and I can cook my meals in. This is literally all that I need, right? This is my cup. I can drink coffee and tea out of this. I can boil water. I can cook meals inside of this. The lid has a strainer built right into it. All I need is this and a spork, and I'm good to go. I can cook ramen noodles in that thing with no problem. I can cook a freeze-dried meal in that thing, no problem. And when you compare the size and weight of just a simple metal cup like this, compared to a large cooking set like this that has a pot and a pan and multiple bowls and cups and everything, it's just overkill, right? I don't need all this stuff. This is literally all that I need and all that I ever really use when I go camping. I would encourage you to evaluate your own cooking set and ask yourself, like, do you really need all of that? Do you really need a pot to boil water in, and then a bowl to pour that water into, and then a separate cup to pour that water into? Or can all of that just be done with one single metal cup that you can cook and eat directly out of? So the next item I stopped bringing camping is my sleeping bag. So I still bring a sleeping bag, but the actual bag that goes into, I stopped bringing that. I actually got this tip from Dan Becker, who's a friend of mine. He's got a great YouTube channel as well, which I'll link to at the end of this video. But what Dan says that he does is actually just shove his sleeping bag in his camping bag, his backpack, and around all of his gear. And the more I started thinking about that, the more I love that idea, and I started adopting that as well. So when you're packing your backpack, you typically have other bags that all kind of cram in there. But what happens is you end up having little gaps between all your other equipment. So by keeping your sleeping bag out of a bag, you can shove that in between all these little gaps, And that's gonna keep your other equipment from moving around as much while you're camping. It's also going to allow you to be more efficient with how you pack your backpack as well. And you're just really using up all the space in there rather than having just a lot of these like little gaps that end up forming when you cram a lot of individual bags within your backpack. And many of us do this exact same thing already when we're packing our backpack and we have extra clothes that we bring. We shove that extra pair of socks or that extra shirt in these little gaps that keep things from moving around and be more efficient. And so now I've just started doing that with my sleeping bag as well. And frankly, I have a hard time justifying having a sleeping bag. Like, why am I gonna put my sleeping bag inside a bag just to put inside my backpack, right? I'll just skip that middleman altogether. So really in the last year or so, I've just stopped bringing my sleeping bag. So the next item I don't bring anymore is going to be tent stakes. There are a couple of different designs out there for tent stakes. I just don't find myself really using these all that often. Typically, all I need to do is find a twig. I'll put a little bit of a tip on that twig, and a lot of times I can just press it into the ground, and that is more than enough to keep my tent or my tarp in place. And I've always been pretty surprised by how weak of a twig I can actually get away with when I'm creating my own tent stakes while I'm camping. I've had some really weak sticks that work perfectly fine as a tent stake. So tent stakes don't really add that much weight to your backpack. They don't really take up that much size, but I just found myself just not really using them. There's been a couple times where I've lost them within my backpack, and instead of spending the time unpacking everything looking for these tent stakes, I just went and made some new ones out of some twigs, out of some sticks, and you know, they worked perfectly fine. Now I typically go hammock camping, and my hammock itself takes 2 tent stakes to kind of pull it out a little bit and kind of stretch it out. And then my tarp takes 4 tent stakes, or I can actually tie the tarp to a tree or something nearby as well. And for years now, I've just been making my own tent stakes out of whatever sticks I can find, and it's worked perfectly fine. Another thing that's always kind of freaked me out about these is I always really worry that this could puncture my backpack. I could easily see that happening. One of them just gets lodged funny, I press too hard, and it goes through my backpack, or maybe it goes through my tent or my sleeping bag, something like that as well. So I always saw these as kind of a hazard when I put them in my backpack. I'm sure it's a simple problem to solve. You could always keep it in the front pouch or something like that, but that's always been on my mind with these tent stakes as well. But most places that you go, even if you just have a simple pocket knife, this is all that you need to create your own tent stakes out of some sticks that you find around. I've been doing that for years now. Instead of bringing tent stakes with me, I've never had any problem with that. So if you want to know what the 10 hammock camping mistakes are that most people make, check out this video I did right here breaking those down. If you want to check out Dan Becker's channel, I've learned a lot about camping watching his channel. You can check that out right over here. Don't forget to subscribe for more prepping and survival videos. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you over in the next video.